Welcome to I'm From the Internet, a podcast about somethingawful.com, the goons, and their consequences. And it's been a while since we've actually hung out and talked, but we are back once again. It's just me and Jay. So, Jay, what's been happening for the past 2 months?
Yeah, the past 2 months have been pretty wild. I mentioned the mini-so, but I legitimately did not intend this third episode to be a huge cliffhanger with like a huge delay like this. We were literally going to do them all in one night, but I was just kind of tired. I was like, okay, we'll get the third one next time. And then basically what happened was I was originally going to be moving up to here in mid-August. But a month beforehand, I just wound up coming up in mid-July because there was kind of like an emergency, and I was like, well, I don't really have any reason to stay in Jacksonville, so I packed up and went there, and I've been helping Fred with his work stuff. Things are pretty good. Our big thing we've been working on is trying to get him an ID, which is very hard because. I could talk a whole bunch about it. Living in New Jersey has been interesting. It's fun. It's very funny after all like the jokes and stuff I've heard about it. Compared to Florida, it's so much nicer here. Like the people, the weather, I'm really enjoying being in New Jersey after 2 months.
Yeah, I just did a whole pile of shows, and I did because I did like the last of the oddities shows that I'm on for this year. At least for the Oddities and Curiosities Expo. Now I'm on World Oddities for some other stuff.
Neat.
But we did Richmond, and that one was really good. And then we had to stay out there because it didn't make sense to drive all the way back to Chicago and then drive back to Philly for the next week's show. So we just stayed out there.
Yeah.
And I stayed in Philly for 6 days, and it was a fucking nightmare. So there's definitely, I've been learning a lot about certain places that is like, oh man, maybe New Jersey didn't deserve its reputation, but the first day I was in Philly, somebody yelled white power at me and threw their crutches on the ground. And then the second day I was in Philly, I was just sitting on the side of the road, and a car drove by and shot me in the face with a pellet gun. So,
wow.
Philadelphia is definitely the city of like older brotherly love. You know what I mean? Like
that's great. I'm very glad. I've only driven past Philadelphia so far. We were building a PC, and it was like time sensitive, so it was very funny. It was like Fred's a coin collector, and he's like, okay, here's a Krugerrand, here's another gold coin. Take this to a coin store, and you should get about this much money for them. And that was me. I got to remember, that's what coin stores are. They're like a secondary banking system for people who want to rely on precious metals. I didn't realize that. That's actually kind of neat. It is just like a bank.
That was funny. Yeah. If you don't follow along on Jay's account. He needed to build a computer. I mean, it's basically what he just said.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he, like, long story short, had to pay for it in, like, doubloons. It's very funny.
Yeah.
It makes me think... I pre-ordered Fallout New Vegas, and I paid for it with Sacagaweas for some reason. And I just had a little treasure chest full of Sacagaweas, so... I
thought you were going to say you paid for it with bottle caps for a second.
Right, yeah, I wish. That would have been fun. But, yeah, that was a whole thing. They were not terribly happy with me at GameStop, but you know what? They also, like, you'll bring them a brand new PlayStation 1, and they'll be like, we can give you $4 for that, So,
yeah, I mean, come on, Winslow, you didn't have to make your payment political,
Right, exactly. God. Yeah, those fucking losers.
Two types of money, normal and political.
Right. Oh, my God. Yeah. Again, if you're not... I mean, I don't know. I feel like most of the people on this... that listen to this pod are like familiar enough with what we talk about that we're not like going too far over the edge when we make these references. Because I don't know, because we're talking about Starfield. I imagine that's what you're making a reference to. Like the new Bethesda game that came out, and it's just this very funny thing where like an extremely mid game comes out and it has pronouns in it, so you can pick whether you're a he, she, or they, right? And predictably right-wing dickheads, which comprise like the vast majority of like online gamer voices, are like losing their fucking minds over it. But that also means that you have a whole bunch of like these like yimby lefty types that are like, actually, because they hate it, now I love it. And it's like, no, no. You don't have to do that. You don't have to force yourself to like a fucking Bethesda game that is like jank on launch because a Nazi hates it, dude. Yeah. Nazis also hate having diarrhea. You're not going to go there and eat fucking pond water. You know, like, come on.
Yeah, like, Bethesda is owned by Microsoft. They're fine. They don't need your support.
yeah. This is not like critical support to the small beans at fucking Bethesda. You know what I mean?
And also, as the backlash for that is very funny to me too, because my kind of formative Bethesda game was Morrowind, which is like, which is all about like, like that has so much weird, funny sex stuff in it. You have like a weird, like pansexual, like imp who runs like one of the things in the capital. There's like a wizard who creates like female clones of himself that are like his concubines. Like there's so much funny weird stuff in that, and then for them to be like, but hold on, calling people by pronouns, I can't relate to that. That's a bridge too far.
Yeah, all of that shit is just too I don't know, man. I was thinking more and more about like how we may have like alienated some of our gamer listeners by going so hard on the Brigador episodes, but I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm somebody who's trying to like break into making games, like not digitally, because I don't have any education in that, and I don't feel like learning it right now. I want to draw my first card game. I think that would be very cool. Sorry, I'm fucking fidgeting over here with markers. If you can hear that on the microphone, and so like I don't know, but going hard against the. Those the fashy nerds in the gaming spheres, like, ugh, it's you just have to fuck them, you know.
Yeah, and I will say, but based on the reaction we've gotten so far, we didn't get any negative reactions to it that I saw, but we did get some positive ones. We got actually at least one person signed up for our Patreon just because of it, and actually pointed out in a message. I need to write a reply to that. But so far, the reaction to it has been pretty good, and I also feel like we've done a pretty good job. Like I feel like any like gamer Americans who would be like offended by the past couple episodes probably fell off because of how kind of that's our steez. That's how we talk about stuff. If it was going to piss you off to the point where you didn't want to listen, it probably would have happened before now, I'd like to think.
Right. I've been listening to Well, There's Your Problem a lot lately, which, if you don't know, is a very fun, very lefty podcast about engineering disasters. Very interesting crew. And there's some parts of it that like I can keep up with entirely, but I also listen to it and I'm like, I don't know if I were to be playing this for somebody else, like if I were to be hanging out with my mom listening to podcasts on like a long drive or something, I would have to like explain a lot of different references to her. And I don't know if that's necessarily what I would want from a podcast. I kind of want people to be able to listen to it no matter where they are,
Definitely, yeah. Like I've listened to the Something Awful episode to that, and I knew about it because I think the creator, one of the hosts, before that, I knew them as a YouTuber because they would do city skyline and civilization, and they would like do like political based things to teach people about city planning as they played it, which was really interesting. And I definitely get that. You do kind of like, I'm someone who knows a little bit about like buildings. I'm kind of handy with my hands, and a lot of the stuff they talk about there is a bit above my I have to have it explained to me. It's like the Doom bathroom is very funny, but the first time I saw it, Something Awful, it was just pages of people posting engineered joists XD. I was like, I have no idea what that is. Please explain to this why this is funny, because I'm sure it is, and I'm glad they did. So yeah, I'm sure that'll be a future episode because it is very funny.
Yeah, what I'm saying is just like I just want to be sure that when we talk about things, that the layperson can also understand what we're getting at,
Yeah, this is. But, I do agree with you. This is kind of inside baseball, and accessibility is important to me because a lot of the show is introducing this to people who've never heard of it before. So, and that's one of the reasons I'm. By all means, if I know I'm a little flippant on here, but I do welcome feedback. So by all means, if you do have trouble, some people have mentioned that. Like I try and be better about repeating dates and stuff and making the time a little better because I do know sometimes I might say like that when it happens once, and then I understand how that can make the time scale a little confusing.
Right. That's the other kind of a similar problem that I have with like the dollop, which is just like, you just turn on the podcast and it's like 15 minutes of dicking around, and then like suddenly you have to understand all of the facets of an extremely specific time period that they mentioned once, and it's just like, what? Like, it's so hard to keep track of that sometimes. But, and also, like, it's hard to listen to, like, Dave Anthony have, like, this psychotic doomer break every fucking episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've already complained about this on this podcast, but, like, that used to be one of my favorite pods. And, like, every time I listen to it, it's just, like, a sort of funny story that Gareth is punching up, and then the last chunk of it is Dave Anthony just like, you fucking people have poisoned the planet and I'm going to die burying my son. And it's like, Dave, this is a comedy podcast.
Yeah, I feel...
Can you try to make it funny? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I feel like if you had, like, Dave Anthony and Matt Crispin from Chapo Trap House, and you put them both in a room together, it'd be like that thing when you have, like, two chatbots that are just repeating the same thing over and over. They'd just be like, drowning in boiling seawater, burying my child. Drowning in boiling seawater, burying my child, over and over.
Yeah, it's just, like... I've seen some... Finally, I've seen, like, a little bit of pushback on, like... the rampant doomerism that is like consuming the fucking left, and it's just very funny to see some people that like their entire identity, like it truly is, it's like watching a malfunctioning robot, because their whole identity is being the, you know, actually like the smarmy in your face guy who's actually correct about the things that you don't know about. And also they are super somber and super sad, right? And they are also needing to be snarky, but also super serious, and all of these things back and forth. And so they're talking about like how all of the world has been like corrupted by COVID, and now everyone has had COVID and everyone's going to die because we didn't do anything because the world is stupid. And it's all so fucking stupid and silly, but it's all so sad. It's just like, it's like just seeing this malfunctioning robot ripping itself apart because it doesn't know whether or not it should be very, very sad, or if it should like take things with a little bit of a grain of salt. And also, everything that they're fucking saying is just wildly not true. Like, we're not all going to be on, like, rebreathing machines in 10 years because we caught COVID once. Like, that's... No part of that is true in any capacity.
Yeah, you know? like people on Something Awful's COVID doomer thread are still calling it airborne AIDS. Like, they think it's that bad.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's the something. I kind of, it's one of those things where it is very bleak and depressing to see people that, like, years after COVID has more or less, like, stopped being a thing, or like, building their entire... I could maybe do an episode on it at some point, but... Again, it is like you said, that is, I think, a mindset I see people get into a lot, and it's something I try really hard not to do myself, where you think that, like, the idea that posting is actually, like, a meaningful political
posting
action.
Is praxis.
So you feeling bad about it is actually good because it means you're accomplishing something, when it's really just like, no, you are driving yourself into an early grave just because it makes you feel something. That's not... Or, like, I think, like, a less depressing version of that is how, like, with the writer's strike... Not writer's strike. With last week, to date this, last week was the Burning Man festival getting flooded. And, you know, the hilarious joke on Twitter was going, oh, there's an Ebola outbreak there. And people were just... And there was an actual joke. It was just people repeating misinformation because they thought, oh, well, if we do this, it will make Twitter less valuable and it will hurt Elon Musk. So by repeating this one not funny joke over and over for a week, I'm actually I'm owning Elon. And it's
I know. I didn't catch on to the thing that they thought that they were actually doing anything meaningful. I thought that it was just like a funny, silly thing that like what if X and Y, or, you know, what if Ebola thing was true, because nobody could find out anything about it, right?
Yeah. It's like it also, especially that's like, if you really believe that, then stop posting on Twitter. That will do way more to hurt the site's the site's reliability as a public institution if people just didn't use it. But again, I'm just posting about posting at this point. So I know that's a maybe a good sign.
It's just very frustrating to, like, I keep thinking about someday I would love to write for, like, Hard Times or whatever, because I just want a headline that's just like, success. This leftist has scolded his friends, or just like something to the effect, of just how often it is that like I'm hanging out with somebody who I'm totally friends with, and like they go out of their way to like, we're all joking and having fun, or like, well, I hope you know that we're all actually going to die because the whole world is stupid. And then they look around and nobody's happy or having fun anymore, and it's like, yeah, man. I wonder why people don't want to fucking hang out with you. Good God.
they just
like, imagine if just like, you're just hanging out with somebody, and then like they just come up to you and they're like, well, here's some suicide statistics. What do you think about that? Is that funny to you? It's like, no, that's also not what we were talking about, but I guess I'll just feel bad now. Congrats, you fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Jesus Christ. What's very funny to me is that every time I like catch up with a friend, the first 20-30 minutes is talking about how much we hate the fucking lefties in our life. because obviously we're not going to talk about how DeSantis is the Antichrist, because it's like, yeah, we both fucking know that, and it's also not funny. Making fun of the left is funny because like they're actually fucking around and doing silly stuff, and you can mock them because they're like the most unserious group of people on the planet,
Yeah, and also it's one of those things.
And everybody else is already making fun of the right, like that's all of our feed is people making fun of the right. We need more people making fun of the left.
Exactly, and also like it's one of those things where it's like when you're with other leftists, it's one of those things where it's like you can always complain about the Republicans, but like you certain it's one of those things where you have to be mindful about who you're around, because some people really just cannot handle any sort of like self-criticism within the group or whatever without it being like, oh yeah, I get it. So you'd just be happier if Trump was president. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I said. You totally understand what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anyways, so Brigador, it's been a million years since you've probably heard those episodes. I'll do my best to give everybody a quick refresher. Brigador was a very interesting looking top-down isometric shooter game developed by some of the people on Something Awful. Yeah, and it was developed by a bunch of people, but in particular a guy named Gossworks. They got kind of pissed off at some of the things that were happening on Something Awful for one reason or another, so they went and they made their own sub-forum and locked it to the outside world. And it was just like a whole bunch of game devs talking, and then over the last few years, they all basically radicalized themselves into different, very dark places. One user on Something Awful exposed them as being real gross transphobic Holocaust-denying creeps, and then we dropped off the last episode by revealing that the person who was the sleeper cell in the Brigador world was a guy named jaybrandstetter, who I'm sitting with right fucking now.
Yeah, and
so
now that I've put that out there, I do want to say that was like the only secret I was still kind of holding on to, and it's like I didn't want to tell people about it because that was like I felt that was like, if I didn't want to give that up until I was in a position where it was something I could actually use it for. Because like if when I did my big apology, I mentioned that, all I would do is be, kind of showing my hand just so I could self-flagellate a little more. Whereas with this, I feel like I've made people aware of it. I've done more to promote it, and we got some entertainment out of it. So hopefully people will forgive me for kind of keeping that one last secret. But I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad I can tell you guys about it, because this is actually interesting and weird and funny, and like I'm glad, because this is a pretty unique perspective to have, to get to not participating, just from a distance, watch a community like this, and get to sort of observe it, and I will tell you guys up front, I wish I had done more to document this as it was happening, because I never my thing was, this was back when I was just like, okay, no one's ever going to know who I am. I'm just going to be so I never thought I would have to share it with people, and here, let me just start with my script here. All right. So I'll give you the bad news up front. I was very new to the world of documenting and writing about inner communities when I did this expose back in 2020. So I didn't have the foresight to try and download a mirror of the bad game forums before I blew up Jack Monahan. And the site banned all accounts with 0 posts, which included my own, after this happened, to lock down on any future leaks. So I lost access to the site just basically immediately after this happened. I just had enough time to see the fallout, out, which we're going to talk about here because something very funny and interesting happened on the Something Awful forums when people were processing this. And I think it's going to be fun to walk through that and kind of give commentary on it. So while I didn't think to save a backup of that, we're mostly going to be going off my memories here. The good news is that I did at least manually save a couple of pages, HTML pages from the forums when I was doing my putting together these posts. So I can put these up there and prove I had access to the site and that I'm not making this up, and also show people what it actually looked like. Like, this is a website that only a few dozen people have ever seen, and it's kind of exciting to get to see that. Like, I think people are going to enjoy seeing that, even if it is like a hate site full of bad stuff, just because, like, you know, getting to see what these people are like when their guards are... So I feel like so much of, like, reactionary grievance culture is performative. It's about, like, triggering the libs. So seeing what these people are like when they don't think there's anyone else around and they could just kind of be real with each other is really interesting, I think.
Yeah, because it takes me back to the Nick Fuentes Discord debacle, where, like, Nick Fuentes is, like, an adamant, genuine fucking Nazi. You know, I mean, not in the way that, like, you know, he's not the perfect person, so he's a Nazi, you know what I mean? He didn't give me the soup or whatever. But, like, he's a fucking psychopath, and he's a right-wing commentator. And in his Discord, you know, it's all, like, Nazi, like, trans hate shit, which that's a whole conversation that I think we should touch on somewhere else, which is, like, trans people. Like, I'm a fan of trans people. I've got a lot of trans friends. Like, I'm very vocally supportive of trans people. And I also they don't fill my life. But people that hate trans people, it's like, they go out of their ways, like, hey guys, do you want to talk about trans people today? And it's like, no. Like, what? What are we doing? That being said, the Nick Fuentes Discord has a whole section for right-wing cat boys, which Behind the Bastards did a whole deep dive into this, and it's honestly pretty fascinating, and it's something that I think me and you have kind of certain, like, interesting inputs on, I would say, as, like, the culture of online masculinity, and, like, how it's all supported by, like, quote-unquote facts and logic, but, like, you poke a single hole in it, it's all just, like, prevarication all the way down. And so, like, you'll have a whole forum of, like, super, super hardcore homophobic, only, like, super jacked, chiseled chads. Like, those are the only true men in the world, and everyone else is, like, this, you know, degenerate, trans, slur. And they're also huge into, like, extremely effeminate, you know, shaved everything from the eyebrows down, feminine, like, cat boys in, like, little maid outfits with cat ears, being, like, posting very lewd photos, and they're like, no, it's not gay, but this isn't gay, none of this is gay. Like, I mean, I implore you that this sounds like it's just a silly thing on the internet that you can just throw onto the pile of silly things on the internet. But masculinity is one of the most interesting things in the world to me. And particularly, like, all of the different... masculinity is a balloon that is just run through with holes, and it refuses to fucking burst. You know? Yeah. And so, yeah, I just... There's so much to say about, like groups that what they allow and how they self-radicalize. I realize that was a long tangent, but none of you have heard my voice in fucking months. You should be thankful. My powerful booming voice.
No, I'm very thankful you did. There's actually a great sort of teaser of what we're going to do, because a lot of the stuff about the bad game memories I'm going to talk about that are, like, the most funny ones, I think, are exactly that. It's people where, like, if you made a word cloud of all their most used words, like, degenerate would probably be, like, right in the center. It's the biggest. But they are all people who are, like, they're like me. They have really weird, complicated sexualities, and just like how I used to do, they cope with it by, like, it's projection. It's like they spend all this time because they feel bad about the fact that they're weird, and it's like one of those, like, okay, yeah, my sexuality is weird, but I know that I'm fucked up. I'm one of the good ones. It's all these people that want to convince everyone that it's actually cool and good and normal to be like this that are the bad ones. And we're gonna have so much. Yeah. I'm gonna have so much. I will say up front also, this is not kink shaming. This is specifically specifically be making fun of this context of like it's like outing a homophobe who like or something. It's like these are people. It's like I'm not making fun of them because they are into weird stuff. I'm making fun of them because they are into weird stuff while doing their best to make sure no one else can ever be weird.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's that totally makes sense. Oh god, there's just so much to fucking say about this stuff.
Yeah,
and we could honestly have like a separate episode just to talk about like bizarro masculinity on the internet.
That would be fun. Maybe that would be like maybe it could be some of our Patreon discussion or something.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to mention this now, but you're actually in a paper about the masculinity on the internet, which I think is like just fucking fascinating.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. I will. That is kind of a fun teaser for a future episode too, because the PhD candidate who wrote their doctoral thesis about masculinity on the internet and included multiple chapters on something awful, which I helped them with. They're going to be a guest on a future episode because one of the things that they wrote about is a something awful saga I've wanted to do an episode on for a while, and I think with some recent news is actually kind of you know, I think it's been thinking about it. To give you a teaser, Smash Mouth singer Steve Harwell recently died because it turns out he's basically been a crippling alcoholic for the past 20 years after his son died and his liver failed. So it's very sad, but I've been thinking about Smash Mouth, and there is Smash Mouth is directly involved, Steve Harwell himself, in a something awful saga that is very fun and interesting and also kind of a formative event in the site's history. So really looking forward to having an academic on to that one, because Ben is a very smart guy. He's so much of the stuff he says is stuff I've like kind of thought and felt, but never really had the language to explain properly. So I'm really glad I know him because he's been very helpful. Whenever you hear me say something really smart about masculinity, I'm probably cribbing from him.
Yeah, that's why I never. When people are like, "Oh, what do you do with a gender studies degree?" I'm just like, I mean, that's like such a fucking hugely interesting thing. I mean, like if you're not someone who is like fucking terrified of somebody who goes by a they them or whatever, which if you are removing some of the hottest human beings on the planet from your fucking plate. If you're not into they thems, good lord, you're missing out. But does that. If you just remove the fear of change and fear of something new, and just look at the way that things are changing so rapidly, and then also kind of these revelations of the history of gender that are kind of being brought to the forefront right now, like, yeah, gender studies sounds fucking fascinating. You know what I mean? Numbers are still numbers. Numbers always been the fucking same. You can study your math all day, but like gender is like this living, breathing thing. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with the gender studies degree? You study gender. It's something people seem to care a lot about these days.
Yeah,
there's a lot
it affects a lot of things, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, fuck, we could go on. We've been talking for like 135 minutes right now. But yes, anyways, so you are taking me through some...
Yeah, sorry, I actually hit that. So yeah, so I'm about to go into the badgame.net stuff I have here. First thing I want to say is that those files, I am going to release them so people can look over them. And a very funny thing about them is that a lot of the posters on Bad Game have their Steam accounts linked to their hate site profiles. Wow. And that is the one account that a gamer can't really abandon, because especially when you're like our age, middle age, you have thousands of dollars in games tied up to that account, as well as like all your achievements and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to putting that information out there and hopefully kind of fucking up these people's gaming experiences. Like, I don't know if I put the screenshot in here later, but one of the funniest things about the fallout of this reveal was a guy got kicked out of his Final Fantasy 14 guild because they found out he was on Bad Game, and the Final Fantasy 14 guild was called like Cat Girl Bargains or something. Like,
that's fun.
Even the anime Cat Girl guys are like, fuck off, we don't want you here.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So, and as an example, I have a post from Bad Game here by a poster named Snood. The context of this post was them. This was a woman named Zoe Quinn, who has been kind of a thorn in these guys' sides for about 15 years at this point. This was when she came out about a game composer raping her, and this is them making fun of her for it. They go,
wait,
this was her going,
Zoe Quinn,
yeah.
Was she like the Gamergate target?
She's the lady who made Depression Quest. So yeah, she's
the first. Yeah, she was like kind of the spark that set off. Not that sounds like I'm blaming her, but yeah, she's like the first piece of the Gamergate, which has now been subsumed into every other right-wing conspiracy, which is, you know...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like
so Zoe Quinn, game dev, who I think... I'm not the person to comment on this, but I think she had a relationship in the past with one of the people who reviewed her game, and then it was outed by somebody else who was, like, very jealous of her or, like, wanted to tear her down or something like that. I don't think either side of Gamergate is pleased with how I'm summarizing things. But, you know, what the result of Gamergate was just, like, an endless, bloody fucking freakout against all women in games, and then after that, anyone who's not a straight white man in games. It's like harassment to the nth degree. It's like a really, really hardcore, bizarre part of the cultural history right now.
Yeah, and we might do an episode on it at some point, because at least that first one, because the Zoe Quinn, like, that thing about her the guy posting the blog post about her infidelity and how it proved that gaming journalism was corrupt or whatever, was first posted on Something Awful. And to give them credit, the game's moderators were being like, what the fuck is this shit, and deleted it. And so Gamergate didn't start on Something Awful because they saw that and they were like, no, fuck you, this is terrible. So instead it got posted on 8chan, and then that's when it took off. So
well, that one's in your backyard then, huh?
Yeah, no, it's I will say it is gosh, I'm not we'll talk. I talked about it a little bit in the private, but Fred is such a nice guy. I was not prepared at all for what he's like in person. I feel like he's in. I'm really enjoying working with him. We're doing a lot of good work, and like I said, we've been off topic enough, but I will definitely talk more about him in the future, because I'm not just saying that because he pays me. We're friends, but I'm having a great time. So, anyways, fuck 8chan. But moving on from that, so this is them sort of doing making fun of her for talking about like how she was abused. Going I just woke up from another exhaustion nap at my desk. Oh my! I had to choose the WordPress theme today. Oof, feeling faint. Better take an ambulance home, boss man. So that's poster Snood making fun of a rape victim, saying that she's just trying to get out of work. And wouldn't you know it, on his icon is a link to steamcommunity.com/ID/Snoodons, where he is Jeff from Toronto, Canada, a level 15 Steam user. His pinned achievement is in Shovel Knight. And there's his TF2 lobby code. So yeah, I'm going to be compiling those permanent links before this comes out. So even if they change their name, we're always going to have those links. So
they are permanent. Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting.
So yeah. So moral of the story is, don't link your Steam account to your hate site account. They don't need to know your Chivos that badly. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about fucking right. Jesus Christ.
So with that intro, here's my oral history on badgame.net as someone who observed it critically from a distance. The first thing I want to say up front, you don't have to hand it to them, but while I absolutely call Bad Game a hate site, it wasn't just race realism and transphobia and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It was a gaming forum, and there actually was some funny and thoughtful content on there, especially in the earlier years of the 2010s before Gamergate happened and the brainworms really hatched. That was one of the reasons why I kept reading it, was because, at the beginning, it was just YCF offsite. Like, yeah, there was some unsavory characters, but there was some genuinely funny and interesting posts. And then as time went on, it just kind of got more and more dire, and then it was no longer me going, let me go on Bad Game to see what funny thing they found out this month. It was, let me go on there to see what horrible thing they're doing this month. And
yeah, it is very much like a train crash, that you just can't help but look at. And I think that we've touched on this a lot, because it is very much a formative part of the discussion that we have on this podcast, but it is a very thin and invisible line between a bunch of guys being dicks and a bunch of guys who are actually actionable bigots, right? And I know that there's a lot of people who might take umbrage with this assessment, because I for one don't ever use slurs, right? But there were a large number of people who in the 90s and in the early 2000s who would say, fuck the Westboro Baptist Church, fuck these Republicans who are super anti-gay, they would be very vocally supportive of gay marriage while also subscribing to the most egregious homophobic stereotypes in the world, right? They or alternatively they would just not when push came to shove, they would not ever join themselves with like a hateful group, or like actually if somebody was out there wearing swastikas and clans robes and shit, they'd be like, no, fuck you, that's disgusting. But they would still be like throwing around really racist jokes under the guise of jokes. And then there's this infinitely thin line between them and the people who actually do that, you know?
Yeah,
and they're actually the hateful type. Because I've been thinking about that a lot recently. That like you might not be a part of the hateful group, but you might be a part of a group that allows for hate to like prosper. You know what I mean? Like that allows for cover, right? Like the band Hatebreed. They're like, if you look at their lyrics, it's just about like tough guy masculinity stuff. But they're not a hateful group of people at all, as far as I'm aware, right? But like their lyrics and their imagery and all of that, like it is, if you have enough people who fucking love you, who are Nazis and really hateful, at some point in time you have to go like, oh, what am I doing wrong here? You know? You know what I mean? Like,
no, I know exactly. Basically, you have to have like an "Are we the baddies?" moment, but with that, it's like, I'd be like, if this is the people I'm appealing to, is this really what I want to be doing?
Right, like there's a, you know, because I'm coming from like the Manson world, and like he did have a few statements early on in his career where like he was very specifically anti-hate, anti-Semitism in particular, and anti-racism. And then the man just kind of like collapsed from the inside. But I also think that like a lot of other people who were low key bigoted and low key hateful signed up with him. And as somebody who just liked somebody who was liked Manson because he was, you know, a middle finger to a very repressive world, and a lot of other people who liked Manson because he was a man expressing a very bizarre and intense sexuality, or a lot of women who liked him because he was very much in touch with his feelings and all these other things. All of us, it was very hard for us to tell that we were actually surrounded by wolves, you know?
Yeah, no, that is always a horrible feeling, and I'm sure, you know, listeners, I know I myself, but I've had plenty of communities that has happened to, or fandoms, or, you know, people I liked or whatever. It's one of the sort of, you know, downsides of our modern sort of internet society is having to, you know, be exposed to that.
Right. Anyways, back to where we were.
Yeah, so like I was, and when Bad Game first started, it was pretty funny, I thought. But as time went on, a lot of the original YCS posters that Margary did there fell off because of how the site was radicalizing. So by the time of the leak, it was really a crew of only about a dozen OG YCS posters, and a bunch of new people who had joined up over time as the forums gained a reputation for being based, and also it being private meant you could go mask off in comfort. So I'm sure some of the people in these leaks are old YCS posters, and we're going to go over some of them. But a lot of these were people who just over time were attracted to it because it became a place where it was like, yeah, if you want to be hateful, you can do it there. And
so, do you think that it was radicalized from the inside or the out? Right? Because like they're on like 4chan and on 8chan and like 8kun or whatever, and all the other sites like that. They and also like, you know, fucking the Stormfront and the whatever, all those other hate sites. They specifically are like, hey, I found another one, and it's like a bunch of kids on some sort of like gaming forum, and they just like will make accounts there and start spreading hate to get people into it. You know, like it's just like a stochastic recruitment process. Or do you think it was just like gamers in a vacuum will just radicalize themselves because they're gamers?
I think kind of
not gamers, but edgelords, I guess.
Yeah, like this particular demographic. I think for me, I think it might have been partially is how the Overton window was kind of shifting on like what it means to be like an irreverent gamer comedy person, because like in the late 2000s when YCS first started, being that type of like of offbeat humor was like saying that the Xbox was huge and the Wii was for babies or stuff. It wasn't like, and then as time went on, as gaming kind of like then as time, like, there was always that sort of reactionary streak in it. It was always kind of like, it was kind of like a safe place for like white males to, and, but as time went on and things became more diverse, things became, people became more critical and aware of these sort of tropes and issues. I think it was sort of like that myth about if you crank the heat up in a pot and the frogs will boil without ever getting out. Like, the temperature was cranking up, and the people that were more aware jumped out, or some people just liked the heat and stayed there, and that's why I think it just kept getting worse. Like, this is something that happened over the scale of like a decade. It's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much more to say, but we've been going on about it. I've been going on about it, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did want to... and one of the dynamics on Bad Game that was really distressing that I kind of touched on earlier was that it had a lot of self-hating Quizlings participating in discussion. Like, there's one...
Let me Google Quizling.
Quizling, for those of you who don't know it, it's a term that I think... it was a guy in World War II, I think. It's basically a term that's kind of popularized referring to, like, Jews that helped the Nazis, but it's more commonly a term for people who help... Basically, people who help their oppressors. Like, I think now a more common term might be like a pick-me or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and there's one guy who I remember because he was really into cross-dressing, and he would do gaming streams in women's clothes, including a couple where he would just start whipping his dick out halfway through and jacking off on camera, and all the bad gamers who were watching him were like, dude, WTF lol, but they kept watching. So again, just a lot of layers to that, and as well as like posting pictures of themselves and stuff, and they did it so much they kind of had a reputation on the site for being an attention whore and would get shouted at by them, but wouldn't you know it, they were right there doing the same kind of epic song and dance about Jews feminizing the goyim with corn syrup and microplastics, just like all of them, and not even in like a kink way, just legitimately being like, yeah, I like to do this thing, but I'm also just, again, just the psychology on display.
I mean, like, but really though, there's got to be. You know what? I could actually pull my aunt and have her on an episode, which would be absolutely wild.
Ooh.
Because my aunt was a criminal psychologist for a long time, and I would love to me and you could like kind of pick her brain about the, this kind of exact behavior, this bizarre self-hating, but also very masochistic and exhibitionist, what makes them not just do it in private, what makes them go not just do it in public where their people are, where there's other people who might actually like them, but go to the place where they are the most hated. And somehow, why do the other ones accept it? Like, when we talk about gender studies being a useless degree, this is where we go, but hold on. There's so much going on here.
Yeah, no, that sounds fascinating. I would love to do that sometime. Yeah, and I'm pretty self-aware. Like this is exactly what my thing was back when I was in a bad day. And so many people I've talked to who used to be like this have said the same things. Like it is, I legitimately think a lot of people who do this, that is like even like that was one of even like Fred. Like that was one of the things that I thought was so funny when I first met him. I was like, you too? It was great. Anyway, so speaking of furries, though, I will say also a lot of the quote-unquote non-furry posters on Bad Game who participated in furry bashing and queer bashing and such were hopelessly addicted to super weird furry porn. I know this because since it was a private forum, they just straight up had like porn threads because they allowed not safe for work stuff on there, and so I could go into, so I would check it out because I was like, what are these guys looking at? And it was very funny to go into the furry porn thread and see the guy who was writing essays about it's funny you mentioned the thing about people being against places that make them comfortable, because he had a big bugbear about this, like some private gay fetish event that was happening at a hotel, and he was like spent like weeks ranting about how it's the downfall of society, how this used to be something that people kept private, but now it's just open and society is so corrupt and everything. And then he would turn around and go into the furry porn thread and post a bunch of like artwork of drawings of furry babes with dicks bigger than their torsos and talk about coming to it and have just zero self-awareness or cognitive dissonance about it. It was like, it was so interesting.
Did you ever see anything of people going also,
yeah,
hey, what are you doing? Did anybody ever push back?
No, it was very funny because that guy, I actually remember his name now. His name on Bad Game was all one word, "fuck you, bitch," because people hated him so much. They hated him so much they changed his name to "fuck you, bitch." So whenever they referred to him, they'd call him "fuck you, bitch," or whenever he got quoted, it said that. And he even had like they coded a special signature to go on all of his posts that said, "This post was brought to you by fuck you, bitch." And it was so funny that he's this guy everyone hated. So then when he went in the furry thread and started posting that, instead of being mad, the other Bad Gamer furries were like, "Whoa, that's so funny. I never would have guessed you were into this." Like, they like rolled with it because it was just so weird. Like, it's so funny.
I mean, like, in an extremely minor way, I was like super drawn to like the more decidedly man-hatey kinds of online feminists for the longest time, because I was like, oh, this itches the same thing for me when it comes to like really aggressive online like discussion and really aggressive online content, because it was like the same amount of rage that I had previously been seeing directed towards Christians and Republicans in my Manson USA days, and now it was directed towards people who I found to be detestable, but I didn't realize that I was also in the crosshairs, because I was like, well, I'm not like this, you know, disgusting like rapist pig that they're yelling about, but I didn't realize that they did not actually differentiate between me and some felonious asshole, you know. So I can kind of understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and I guess it was also, before I move on, this did kind of remind me, just to kind of make fun of myself a little bit and kind of like other stuff, like, I guess kind of my equivalent to what happened with that is like when you're like me and you have like really weird, complicated sexuality where like you are participating in a very small group of people that overlap with you. There's this very interesting phenomenon that happens where like you'll have like, literally we're talking about groups of like dozens of people. You'll have one guy who is like a big member in that community because he has a lot of disposable income, so he'll buy a lot of artwork. So if you want to see your thing depicted, you're probably going to see this guy's artwork that he buys a lot. But the guy himself is like super annoying and unpleasant in a way that like makes you not want to interact with him. So it's just like, it's very funny to be like, darn it, these are like, I have 5 people I can like participate in this with, and one of them is the most annoying, is like a person I cannot stand. It's just so funny when your world is that small, how these personalities can become amplified like that. And I'm sure I'm that for a lot of people too. I'm sure there are some people like, darn it, I really like this fat panda, but like the guy who owns him's fucking asshole. I hate him.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Yeah. But anyways, I was thinking about that because they did, like I meant, they did have a decently sized furry enclave on there. Nobody super big, but there was one guy who a couple years before the leak happened, he kind of blew up as a fursuiter, and then he did a goodbye post about how he was leaving Bad Game because it was too much of a liability for his newfound success. And I'm not naming them because even if that was a selfish decision, they did get out of the game years before this. And from what I recall, they were mostly a harmless shit poster. They weren't a big, and I wanted to bring them up because that was an example of people could see how the winds were changing and people were leaving because they could tell, like, me being here is dangerous. Like, people, that was one of the reasons why I was so fascinated by Gauss, that he just kept staying and getting worse, even when everyone else, people who honestly weren't as smart or savvy as him were able to recognize that. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm just saying like they recognized what was happening and they're like, I got to get out of here because this is a time bomb. And, eventually it blew up. And I'm the one who did it.
Yeah, I think that's a big contribution to the radicalization effect, is the fact that it is, that you're watching people jump ship, and it makes you go like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not a fucking coward. I'm not going to do X or Y. And so you just have to like continue doubling down,
Yeah, and I'm sure your aunt would have a lot of interesting stuff to say about that, because I know that is a big dynamic in, like, real-life hate groups. That's why, like, so many Nazis have swastika tattoos and stuff, because you're pressured to do that because it makes it harder for you to leave. It makes it so that, it's the same reason why, like, the Westboro Baptist Church go out of their way to protest these things and get yelled at by people, because they being yelled at makes their kids less likely to leave the church. And
right.
That's one of the reasons why, like when I see people being like, oh, I saw someone with a swastika tattoo cover up, I don't want to have anything to do with them. It's like, the fact that they covered it up is probably a good sign. It means they don't want to be that anymore, and they're trying to get out of it. Like,
yeah, I kind of feel that same way. It's a very complicated issue of, like, should we allow reintegration? But it's like, if you believe that society should offer rehabilitation, then yeah, you have to accept that that's going to be what it is, because you don't know everyone's history. Like, talk to anybody and they've probably had some pretty shitty opinions in the past, and that's part of growth. It's very frustrating when you're talking with somebody who insists that they've always had the right opinions. They've always been, I've actually always believed the current thing is the way that it is. And it's like, you're lying, and we both know that you're lying, except not 100% sure that you actually know that you're lying,
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, no, and yeah, just in general, listen, there's so few real concrete ways of, like, combating hate and helping people who used to be that escape it. That is one of the few, like, real ones that I know about, and is cool. So yeah, it's like that. There are, like, charities you can donate to like, help people that are trying to reform and leave get their tattoos removed and covered up, and that's a small but very important step of that. And I'm glad that exists and those people can get help.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I will say, on that sort of heartwarming note, I do have to come clean here about how I ended the last episode. I did exaggerate a little when I talked about the people that I was going to be exposing here, but I did it in the hopes that maybe I could bluff someone into outing themselves ahead of the announcement. Because, folks, I'm sorry, but the one game dev that was on this website, I don't remember their name. Maybe talking about will pop out, because they were super unremarkable. They created a 2D shmup that got like 10 reviews on Steam. That was like a Steam Greenlight title. So again, that was another reason why I was so fascinated by Gauss, because these communities, they mostly exist to tear down other people's work. You very rarely have actual other creators in them. So someone this big and prolific who just kept going was super compelling to me. So again, sorry about being a little sensational at the last ending, but I did it for a good reason, and it was a pretty exciting ending, I think. So now that I've gotten out of the way, look, it was the summer of quarantine. None of us were firing on all cylinders at the time.
Fair enough. Granted, that was 2 months ago, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about like sorry, that was a sentence from earlier about me not copying the files. I got a little mixed up there. So, anyways, Jack's stuff has been public knowledge for years now. So, what did his brother Hugh and their programmer Carl post like on Bad Game? Because, like I mentioned in the last episode, a big part of their thing was saying that they didn't share his views, when in reality they had all been posting on the site, and their programmer had actually done programming work for it, which was listed on his GitHub. So, again, weird thing to lie about. But at the time I was making the big image compilation for Gauss, I searched and I couldn't find anything of theirs that was also as directly incriminating in a way that worked out of context. So that's why I didn't leak it. So Bad Gamers, I wasn't covering for their brother. I wasn't being paid off by them. It wasn't a conspiracy. They just legitimately didn't post anything that objectionable in the same way. They were participating in some pretty hinky and edgy threads, even if they weren't as active on the board as Jack was, though. And that's why when I made my first video, I was speculating that he would come back, because I knew Hugh and Carl were already sympathetic to his views and were only acting out of interest for their bottom line when they rejected him in his position. So, yeah, and also I will say up front, this is just my oral history. This is just entertainment in Minecraft. I'm just talking from my memories here. So, I'm not legally liable for any of this. Please don't do that.
I, however, am. So if you're going to sue anybody, sue me and take all of my fucking tarot money.
No, I will say, since my account was deleted shortly after the leaks, I don't know what has been going down there over the past 4 years, but I did get to witness the immediate fallout of the leaks, and let me tell you, it was very funny to see them running around with their heads on fire, wondering what was happening and theorizing about which of their many enemies had done this, and then eventually figuring out it was a total nobody lurker that when they pulled up the search logs and found out who had been searching, like user, Gauss, term, slur, user, Gauss, term, other slur, and compiling all the results. And they were able to find that's how they found my account. And they were just gobsmacked. Like, they were generally like, no, it was so funny. Like, and I don't know what I would have done in that situation, because, yeah, you never think about that. There are so many lurkers on places like this, and every single one of them is their own person. You never know who could be there.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's always the thing that surprises me, is when they have to figure out the leaks, like how do you actually nail that down. But what I do think is very interesting is like that they can pull the search terms. That just seemed like, I guess I don't know the full admin access for how these things work. Like the fact that they could actually pull your terms, I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know if they could, but I figured that was something they might be able to, and that was kind of one of the downsides. It's like, oh, this sucks. I'm not going to be able to read all these horrible posts anymore, but it's for a good cause. I want to break good, and this is going to be my first step on it. And I will say, they did on Twitter. They did figure out what my Twitter account was based on. They actually knew they connected my Twitter account, my real one, and my Something Awful identity years before people at Something Awful did, which is very funny. I'm surprised they never blew me up. I don't know why. Maybe I just put the fear of God in them. They didn't want to mess with me. Maybe they didn't want to give me the satisfaction of knowing that like they cared that much. But I got death threats from them, but I never had them blow me up, which is very surprising to me. It's weird to think that this episode might be giving some closure to the people from Bad Game now that they actually know like who did this and why. I didn't think about that.
I mean, it works.
So there was about a week between me buying the avatar with the leak post and me finally posting the image directly in the Brigador thread because nobody was taking the bait. But on Bad Game, they found the leak post almost immediately, and so we had about a week of full damage control of them trying to ride it out and them trying to figure out who did it and fix it. So Jack, Hugh, and Carl had all their posts deleted from Bad Game at this time. And the other posters on Bad Game changed their usernames and avatars to that of other famous game developers, because the idea was that then if there were any further leaks, people would see that and think it wasn't actually Jack Monahan, but an impersonator. It's just, that's like a child's plan. That is hilarious. And I included this screenshot. You can see one of them here. They changed their name to Roberta Williams, who was like Sierra's big adventure game developer. A guy changed his name to Chris Roberts, but then he kept his signature with his original username, Buff Butler, in it, which is very funny. Just, this is all so incompetently done. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the guy who created Dark Souls.
Of course.
Yeah, this Japanese game developer is definitely hanging out on this obscure American website. Yeah. So when Jack confessed and requested his self-ban on Something Awful and deleted his social media, this was seen as a betrayal by the Badgers. That's what people on Bad Game called themselves, Badgers. And they saw, to them, he had caved into the woke mob after spending years talking up a big game. So the other Badgers went full scorched earth on him after this. So he was totally alienated from both sides after all was said and done.
None of them thought that was just a fucking ploy.
No, exactly. That's the thing. That's the thing that was so funny about this, because when this was happening, at first I thought, okay, this is a ploy. Then I thought, okay, maybe this is them trying to run interference on him. But I actually had access to Bad Game, and they were serious. This wasn't a smokescreen, and we're going to see more of them kind of eating their own as we go along on here. So, if nothing else, this is another kind of thing about a sort of cautionary tale about this. Is like, no matter what, this is what happens on communities like this. When things get exposed, they eat each other. And that happened exactly to Jack. He thought that, he did an insincere apology, and he alienated himself from both of them. That's just, there's no winning with this. This happens to all of them. We all know, like if you think back to all the big figures from like the 2016 election, like your Milo Yabba-dabba-doopolis or whatever, like all of them are nothing now because eventually people just turned on them. It's one. I'm thankfully too, like, because I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, and also Stellar Jockeys, the company, their Discord actually locked down around this time because the people from Bad Game were doing invasions to punish Jack. And a bunch of the Discord moderators quit at the same time because they saw what Jack had been doing. And the ones that disagreed with him quit because they were like, fuck this. And the ones that agreed with him quit because they were like, fuck having to do all this extra work. And it was like, it's very funny how ultimately the people who used to support him almost did more harm than I did. It's funny. I like it.
Yeah, it's... I think that's one thing that you can really learn about the. I don't have enough knowledge of it from the left side, but the right, they're wild dogs and they'll eat their own. So like you lose one person and it's kind of a warning shot to the rest of them that like if somebody tries to get out of the mafia, they just they fucking kill him and they kill his whole family. And so nobody else wants to leave. And so this one dude made like a very self-effacing and very fucking fake apology. And then everyone else just rips the dude apart. You know, all of the people that were his allies that, like, of all people, should be the ones that could actually see that he's not being fucking serious.
Yeah.
They completely turn on him.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where it makes you wonder, like, after that happened, how do you not seriously have like a soul-searching moment and realize, and like, because like I kind of went through this last year when I did the Guy Man video. Like, my old friends didn't want to hang out with me anymore because I had lied to them about who I was, and they thought I was like, you know, this. They saw these posts, and they were like, "We don't want anything to do with you." And then the people, the quote unquote like bad people, didn't like me either. And I had to seriously consider. It was like, where am I going to go from here? And I could have doubled down. I could have just been like, you know what, fuck this. You all abandoned me. I'm gonna be a baddie now, or whatever. But no, I had to. You know, I went through some angst. I definitely wasn't. You know. I had to go through a lot of personal growth and everything, but I'm glad I didn't make that choice. I'm glad I didn't just, you know, vanish or regress, and instead, even though I'm glad that I'm hopefully continuing on this path to do some good and, you know, at least create something. That's, again, this is, I know I think I said it before, but so much of what I find fascinating about Jack is that he kind of is like a dark mirror to my own kind of existence on the internet, and as someone who has spent so much time in secrecy and creating alts and stuff, and in the aftermath, I am just fine. I'm glad that I'm glad that he exists, just so I can look at him and go, I'm glad that's not me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in others, we can see a lot of the paths that stretch out before us, you know?
Yeah, and that's part of why I was so disappointed when he came back, because I genuinely hoped this would have been a wake-up call for him. Like, I am not, like, I'll admit, like, I am a bit of a contrarian and a shit stirrer, but, like, I genuinely, like, wanted...
I fully agree. I have seen your takes on Twitter. Oh, yeah. I fully fucking agree.
Yeah, I am very inflammatory. I'm sorry. I'm trying on it, but sometimes I it's fine. But yeah, just anyways. So to move on from that, a fun bit of bad game drama that I also think kind of illustrates what a toxic community they were. At one point, they were doing a forums game of Civilization 4, where each participant had their own private sub-thread where they could plot and strategize their game with other posters, and then but the other players didn't know about it. And one player was so paranoid that the other players were spying on their posts that they actually embedded some malicious code in the forum to try and scrape data from everyone who read their posts, and then got the mods to give them a list of everyone's IP addresses so they could compare it and prove that other players were spying on them, which resulted in a huge meltdown when it came to light, and everyone making fun of them for it, while they just continued to swear that everyone was cheating and they were losing. It was really pathetic and sad and weird. It also kind of just like, yeah, like, this is a community where everyone was at each other's throats.
Yeah, that sounds real fucking sad. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like, the mood was very much this kind of, like, bleak performative nihilism, like places on the Chans and the Kiwi farms. A really common sentiment was that their lives were worthless and meaningless, and that the world was garbage, and that video games were the only thing in their lives that they found enjoyment and meaning in anymore, which is why they hated it so much when, like, you know, the women and progressives or whatever were trying to take that from them. There were multiple badgame.net posters who died over the years, and it was super bleak because you'd go into the memorial threads and see the Badgers, like, literally envying the dead and talking about how they hoped they were next because they didn't have anything to live for now that gaming was infested with fail AIDS. It's legitimately, like, one of the saddest things I've ever seen, and no punchline, just human misery.
Yeah, it's so funny that you can just, like, the depressed people, as a person who's been very, very depressed throughout my life, they are some of the easiest people to trick into, you know, unconscionable evil, because you want to do anything to you know, wipe away this feeling. And so, yeah, you just have these groups that target sad men, and then, you know, they turn them into little fucking hate monsters like this, you know?
Yeah, and also, like, as someone, like, I've kind of, experienced kind of, like, as someone who kind of shared, like, I didn't like what modern games were like, so I just stopped playing video games for a while. It was great. That's when I started making YouTube videos and podcasts, and I still play them every now and then, but it just wasn't doing it for me anymore, and instead of deciding I'm going to build my entire life around being mad about this, I was like, you know what? I'll just find another form of recreation for now.
Right.
And one last thing this place had in common with the Chans was pedophilia.
Of course, naturally, very cool.
Yeah, a great example of that was it was so bad that at one point someone on Bad Game tried to make their own spin-off forum called Stardust.vg, explicitly because they wanted to have a place to talk about games without having to have sexualized anime children around. But it collapsed almost immediately due to lack of interest because a lot of people legitimately, like, that was their culture. They were like, we want to talk about video games and be gross about anime children, and I'm all out of video games.
Yeah, it's funny that, like, some of the most sensorial people on the planet are these, like, right-wing freaks, and then you just say, like, hey, I know that you're all freaked out about groomers and pedophiles in Congress, but maybe we should stop posting pictures of naked children. And they go, like, how dare you? You know what I mean? Like, that's all. I mean, I say funny. I don't mean funny. I just mean, like, that's a very consistent aspect of it. Is, like, yeah, I mean, just how gamers responded when the devs of that Skullgirls game, which is, like, a fighting game that's been out for almost a decade, and they updated it so that one of the, like, 16-year-old girl characters doesn't show her panties when she does a high kick. And they also had, like, a guy with... I guess he had, like... I don't know if he had a swastika armband, but he had something, like, very similar to that. And I think there's some other weird, like, racy stuff that is, like... It was kind of out of time then, and it was more out of time now. And, like, gamers just lost their fucking minds. It was one of the highest reviewed games on Steam. It was like people loved this game, and then they found out that they couldn't do that they specifically removed a naked child, not a naked child, but a child's panties from it, and they just lost their fucking mind, you know. And now it got review bombed to the point that, like, somehow it has, like, 16,000 reviews and they're overwhelmingly negative.
I am so glad that you brought up Skullgirls, because I actually have a specific Skullgirls anecdote from Bad Game that is very funny in my notes here. So, there's a character in Skullgirls named Misfortune, and in the fighting game thread, about people were talking about it, and one guy posted a quote, "I want to come on Misfortune's fat tits," and later on he makes a post, and he says that he'd been posting that at work, and later on his boss calls him into the office and reads him the post about wanting to come on Misfortune's fat tits, and tells him, this is not appropriate for work computing resources. So just that story. And then the fact that he comes in and tells it to everyone. Like, if my boss did that to me, I would take that to my grave.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. That's dark fucking times.
Yeah, so that's how invested these people are in Skullgirls, which I help. Also, interesting factor about Skullgirls is that back in the day, one of the animators on it was, like, a literal, like, not safe for work anime porn artist that they hired to work on, which is one of the reasons why people are so invested in it becoming less sexy, because it used to be part of its marketing was they actually got, like, this based anime titties artist to draw the panty shots.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother or surprise me, that they had... Yeah, like, maybe you don't have, like, a super fucking grotesque porn animator, like Shad or whatever the fuck his name is. Yeah. Maybe don't have him involved in your game, but everyone else, it's just like, yeah, like, fucking the Disney animators draw porn on their fucking free time, you know what I mean? Like, it's the biggest demand in the world. Of course there are going to be people that do that, so... And having, like, sexy characters in a fighting game, like, that's... I can't think of a fighting game that doesn't have a sexy character in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just part of it.
If anyone ever does make the world's first asexual fighting game, please let me know. I'd probably like to be into that. But yeah, and another funny case of horniness from Bad Game was there was this guy whose name I don't remember, whose whole thing was photoshopping women green. His thing was that like he was really into like goblins, and his thing was that he could only come if like a woman was green. So like they would have threads where they would post like pictures of like attractive women, and then the guy would go in and Photoshop them green, or sometimes like give them tusks or whatever. Be like, oh fuck, this is so much better. And I just thought that was so funny just to see this guy like very earnestly just goblinifying women. Like if that was like just a very funny image when I think of that place. And I'm gonna end on kind of a bummer here. There was a guy who actually died on there from playing Civilization 4. Again, these were all some real Civ 4 heads. He had diabetes, and he was so into a game of Civ 4 he missed his insulin and died. So
oh god, Civ 4 is not even the good one. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's tragic and gross, and there's a lot of other things happening there, right? But Jesus, because I don't know, man.
I
remember when World of Warcraft, and like maybe not World of Warcraft, but like the precursor MMOs that were very big and important were taking off, and I just remember some of like the online horror stories that like easily frightened children and also like school moms would tell themselves at PTA meetings about like there was a kid who like he played so many video games that when he didn't actually have human thoughts anymore, he would think like stand up, enter, move over to the couch, enter, sit down, enter. Like he would think like a computer thinks, and it's like, wow. What are you fucking talking about? Like the grip that early creepypastas had on the early internet before they knew that they were creepypastas is just like such a funny aspect of our culture, because they were just such a thing. The Marilyn Manson had his ribs removed so he could suck his own dick, and like all these other freaky internet things that we heard about, and it was all just like completely insane bullshit that made no sense, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm really interested to, especially now that like the first generation of people to grow up with creepypasta have become like adults and are creating their own stuff. Like that is one of those things I think is there's going to be some really interesting studies done on that, because that was arguably like one of the only like a new art form that these people grew up with. Like that type of microfiction horror on the internet like wasn't really, that's new, and it's always cool when that people run with that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that we are in an interesting age of horror right now, and especially of creating fiction. But I am also like a big fan of like all the weird analog stuff. So
yeah, no, same. I love.
No surprise there.
Yeah, no, same. I really like. I'm glad analog horror has taken off a lot, and especially 'cause, like in the 2000s when I was a teenager, horror was in a really bad place. Like that was like the era of like the PG-13 Platinum Dunes remakes. Like there wasn't a lot of good horror film or like on the internet. Like I guess we had Marble Hornets then. That was pretty good, but like, you know,
I never got into that. I'll need to figure out.
I never actually watched it, but I'm aware of it, and like people speak highly of it, and like I appreciate it for what it was, because it was like arguably like one of the first big analog horror things to kind of take off. Like, you know,
right.
I know some people are probably getting mad at me for that, but like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, one last thing about Bad Game I want to do before I wrap up on this thing is, once a guy complained that getting called a chud was literally the same thing as being called the N-word. So that's why I use chud all the time, because I know it pisses these people off so much. That's why you see people online making fun of people using the word chud, because it actually bothers them. They want to act like it's like, oh, I can't believe you're still using the word chud. That's so old. It's like, yeah, it's great. It still pisses them off.
Yeah, I mean, get what you pay for.
Yeah, so if you had any questions about Bad Game before we move on to this final part where I talk about the leak, the aftermath of the leak on Something Awful and the stuff that happened, this is a good opportunity, I think, for that.
Was it all dudes? Did you see any non-dudes on the site?
I don't remember if there. Yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't remember any cis women or trans women. I remember like cross-dressers or people that were kind of like gender fucky for like a horny reasons, but they didn't identify. They still identified as male. So like, yeah, that's kind of how it was. Yeah, just oops, all dudes.
Yeah, I've been very curious watching the latest, crop of like right-wing women pop up that, because it's the self-destructive tendencies of a lot of these things are always very interesting, but especially when you're looking at like Pearl Davis, who is like, Pearl Davis is like a right-wing, like women shouldn't vote tradcath freak, but she's also like very, how do I put it? In the way that Ben Shapiro will like do and say super embarrassing things on the internet, and it almost seems like he doesn't realize that they're super fucking embarrassing and super like silly, and that he's just going to get clowned on. Like, yeah, obviously Ben gets money for getting clicks. Like, we get that. But, like, there's some people who are, like, much smaller who do, like...
smaller.
Like, I mean, Pearl just posted about, like, specifically that if you are a woman and you're not married by 25, then you're a low-value woman and you should feel ashamed. And she's 26 and she's never been married. And she also... And that's, like, super readily available knowledge. And she's also posted some shit about how she doesn't have any female friends. And some other right-wing talk lady was like, well, you can be my right-wing friend, female friend. And she's just like, well, no. And like doing these things that, like, they're so embarrassing. But I wonder, like, what's your fucking game? Like, you don't have to be an Andrew Tate, like, only W's all the time. I'm always winning. I'm, like, this priapistic fucking freak. But I don't get the, like, the super obviously pathetic, like, fumbling over yourself, but also right-wing, you know, Aryan youth type. Like, I don't get, like, what's your long con here?
Yeah, me neither. And there's so many of them, but I still don't know. It's
cool. Anyways, what else do we have here?
Cool. So this is the last bit here. So we can talk about, now that we kind of have some background on Bad Game and the posters on there, I want to go over what happened to the Brigador thread after Jack was banned, because it's really funny and it's an opportunity to read some funny posts, which is the show is largely about. So the Badgers, who had mostly, for the most part, long since abandoned Something Awful due to it being woke. That was another funny thing, was that they viewed Something Awful as like this woke hive mind of SJWs, which was very funny because, like, as anyone who's listened to the show will know, it very much wasn't.
Absolutely,
it's just kind of, again, that whole everyone who is against you is what you think your enemy is.
Right. Yeah.
Thing. So here we have a poster named Tube Shake replying to someone telling them to shut the fuck up, Chud. If you want to read that post.
When the dust has settled, all you culture warrior vultures that are just here to scold everyone will be long gone, moving on to your next fixation. Stop me if you've heard this part of the story too.
User was put on probation for this post.
So yeah, a lot of really good gamers trying to talk like Sephiroth dialogue in this one of them, because they're figuring it's like, yeah, we don't care about accounts anymore. We're gonna go in there. They're trying to run interference, because this is before Gauss. This is like before they really turned on Gauss, and so they're doing this here. I mean, some of these are just like people pointed that guy made that post, and then everyone immediately calls it out. The logical right-wing ownage brigade has signed on, to quote that same poster when they reply. So since that didn't work, they try and change the topic by accusing the other posters in the thread that are criticizing Jack Monahan of being the real bigots, in the hopes that it will stick. So, like, Sandwich Anarchist, who is that poster earlier, another poster named Sir AIDS quotes him saying, "Attention everyone who isn't me, do not engage with this guy. He's posted pics of dead kids, parentheses WTF, and all sorts of other insane shit on this forum. According to his rap sheet, this guy is a real piece of crap." So
yeah.
This is literally them just going,
I'm familiar with, like, tearing everybody down as you are, like, in active collapse, you know?
Yeah, and especially on Something Awful, where everyone is like, we know this trick, you're not fooling anyone. In other words, they try to use their epic logic debate bro powers to shut down the conversation. So this poster, The Quake, if you want to read theirs.
So everyone deeply offended is going to uninstall this game, not buy any new content, and let this tainted piece of software fade into obscurity along with this thread, right? Alright, let's start now. If you post after this, you're only adding to the problem of bringing back the pain. Which that first one is not also, it's like, for start, the first one's not true. Like, if you've paid for the game, it's not tainted. You can continue to play it. Like, you're not actually contributing to the success of the game after having paid for it. And the second part is like, how are we adding to the problem by continuing to talk about the problem itself. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
like none of that adds up.
That is one of my favorite kind of like instincts people like this have, is where they try to convince people to not talking about it is actually doing harm, like, or like the whole like, oh, I never heard of this, I'm gonna buy 5 copies now, from a guy who if you look at their timeline, all they do is complain about the thing they say they never heard about. It's like,
right.
Yeah. So someone else with access to Bad Game starts posting stuff from there, showing Jack trying to make amends with the Badgers and being rebuked, and also showing how the administrator there is handling things. So I still had my account access then, but this is, I wasn't posting it in the thread because I didn't want them to know that I could read Bad Game. I just wanted them to know I saw that post from earlier. So this poster, Juggalo Baby Coffin, posts a Discord screenshot with the quote, "Womp womp," and it's a message here from Gaussworks in Discord, talking with Hocus, who is a Bad Game poster.
Here we go. Okay. Who's going to be who on this one? I'll be Gaussworks?
Sure, go ahead.
Whoa, are you going after Carl?
Is that Carl or Carrie?
Carl, yeah, that's Carl, the programmer, the third, number 3 at the company. Because this was when, after he got outed, this was when the Bad Gamers were trying to convince people that Carl and Hugh were also posting on there. And again, it's weird. And the funny thing is, since by this point Carl and Hugh had all their posts deleted, the people from Bad Game couldn't screenshot them to share them with people. So like them helping their buddies screwed them over when it came time to try and like turn the tables on them. It's very funny. Yeah, so this is him being like, whoa, you're going after our programmer, and Hocus goes, me personally, I don't need to.
But why is he drawing aggro?
I'm sure if you think long enough, you could figure it out, Gauss.
Fair enough.
All traitors must hang. You threw the entire forum under the bus with the statement you made, and the other game devs too. Did you think there would be no consequences? You broke the #1 cardinal rule. Was it naivety, misspelled, or just pure greed? I guess it doesn't matter at this point. And it... Gauss, all you've done is ensure that what you were trying to avoid happening will now definitely happen. You've posted for years and supposedly dumbfuck game fez who kowtowed to these sharks, and then did exactly that, the moment things got a little tough. You've torpedoed your own career, and for what? So again, this is... I like him. He's open to be like, man, I wish I didn't turn my back on Bad Game, because like I think he legitimately thought he was going to get away with this.
Yeah, but he didn't really torpedo his career, did he?
Well, this is when this first happened. This is when it looked like it could have consequences. It wasn't until later that found out, oh, I'm just going to get away with this. Also, this is before the Mandalore video came out, which I think is a big part, because once that came out and the game started selling better than it ever had, I think that was when it was like, oh, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I tried watching some Mandalore stuff again, and I was just like, God damn it! Like it sucks that so much of the crux of this was a game, like a sort of like a game journalist not doing the right fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like you can talk all day and all night about like game journalism being like so corrupt and so bad and so blah blah blah, but if you fucking look at it, we're talking about somebody who like left out a very key piece of information from their reporting about this game. Not reporting, but like their review of this game, which is like, yeah, man, this is kind of an important part of the whole fucking story, It's just like right now, as we record this, Tucker Carlson last night had an episode where he's interviewing the guy who had gay sex and smoked crack with Barack Obama. And he says, like, he clarifies, just so that everybody's clear, that this guy took a lie detector test before they did this interview. And they did not clarify that he failed the lie detector test. You know what I mean? Like there's.
I was not aware of that detail. That's very funny. Oh gosh. Oh,
yeah.
Man. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, because, like polygraphs don't really work, anyways. But the fact that he took it and then it didn't work, and then they're just like ignore it. Ah, that's funny. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to read this picture here because the admin of the site posted this very big thing with a lot of slurs in it as a announcement to this. But I'm going to say, so what they did as a reaction to this was they deactivated all the accounts with 0 posts. No more registrations without vouching. So at this point, the registrations are still locked down. I am genuinely curious how many people are still on this site after all this went down. And also, one thing he mentions is very interesting is that there's almost 2 years of hosting paid for by very kind donators. So I'd like to keep this place running, and my favorite game developers posting here. Sorry for all this gay shit. So
sorry for all this gay shit.
Yeah, and also I will mention their avatar is a Photoshop picture of former Something Awful moderator Axe Maniac, photoshopped to be against a trans flag with a wig and a hair bow photoshopped on them. So that's the level of humor we're operating at here. This games administrator who pissed me off a decade ago, they're trans. That's what I'm going to say about them. I'm going to own them that way.
I mean, the right's getting better at comedy, and it's making the lefties nervous.
Yeah. And I did mention that because, the weird thing about this is they do have a Patreon account that is still active. So if you're a listener to this show and you want to piss these people off, go to I'll include a link to their Patreon in our notes. Go there and report them. I've done it, and Patreon doesn't seem to care. But who knows? Maybe if we get more people doing that, they'll have to take notice.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know.
Anyways, after that PSA, so that poster, Juggalo Baby Coffin, who posted those bad game screenshots, which they said they got from a Discord, so they don't actually have access to the site, but they're really enjoying antagonizing the Badgers. They keep posting screenshots. He says here, just FYI to the forum weirdos, I'm not on your forums. A friend sent these to me when we were discussing the Brigador situation, which I found out just before my first post in this thread like half an hour ago. And so after that's setting him up, another sort of fun character in this last scene here is Atomic Thumbs. You might remember that name. In the Muerte episode, they were the one at the end who went hiking up the path to collect his stuff and ate the burrito.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, Atomic Thumbs is great. I follow them on Twitter. They're a great Twitter follow. I actually reached out to them about being a guest on this episode because I thought they might enjoy having some context about what happened to them that we're going to talk about here. But he said, understandably, this is, everything about Brigador, that's just bad memories. You don't want to have to deal with it. And
right.
I'll talk more about that in the end, but I'm going to close kind of talking about the human costs of this and in a good way. Anyway, so Atomic Thumbs.
All right. Yeah. So you read Tube Shake and I'll read Atomic Thumbs' response.
Okay, Tube Shake. I think your continued shrieking and name-calling really does you a disservice more than me. All I did was draw attention to the facts, shrug.
Silence, bitch. If my mom is listening, that's the only time I use that word.
Same here. Yeah, I only use it when I'm quoting people, but it's a good one. Another
or when somebody's being a total bitch. Yeah, but other than that,
poster EA Sport. It says, I really don't think you should have resorted to this, Gauss. Even if you personally feel you need to change as a person, you could just donate percentages of the profits to charity. I've been enjoying your stuff since YCS opened back in 2007, the reason I even regged there. I know it can be hard to not absorb ideas of the people you're posting with. I hope you could find a stronger moral center that can counteract that so you could feel comfortable returning.
I really don't think he should have been a bigot and posted bigoted posts for an extended period of time. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that, the thing that they're clutching their fucking pearls about is the fact that he apologized, Yeah. It's just
yeah.
Good God, you fucking wimps.
Yeah. So this poster, another poster on Bad Game on his own without anybody else from there knowing about it went on to, he found an archive of Discord conversations from an actual literal Southern Poverty Law Center hate group and took those chat logs from Discord and edited the usernames to people in the SA thread that were criticizing Jack and Brigador, and they post the edited screenshots in the thread to try and convince everyone that the people who oppose bigotry are the real bigots. And this poster posts this edited screenshot and a quote to Atomic Thumb saying, to Juggalo Baby Coffin saying, "This you," and it's all these actual just Yeah, like a bunch of actual like slurs and stuff being highlighted, and I included just another screenshot there of the very obviously fakely doctored screenshots. One thing that I think is very funny here is when they edited the screenshot to put Atomic Thumbs in his name in there. On Discord, it used to be that you'd have your name and then a 4-number sequence at the end that was random, but you could pay $10 to customize. And in this message here, the fake number they put at the end of Atomic Thumbs' name is 1488. So they're implying that not only is Atomic Thumbs secretly a racist, but they are also someone who would pay money to use Discord just to put the Nazi number at the end of their account. Like,
yeah, I wonder if Discord allows you to pick 1488. I feel like that's the one 4-digit number that they would say no to.
Yeah,
you know?
and now they got rid of that section, so that ability, so now they don't have those numbers at all anyways, but that was very funny. And the thing was, like I said though, since he didn't tell anyone on Bad Game that he was doing this, the other Bad Game posters saw the posts in the thread, thought they were real, and then started losing their minds at finally being validated that the SJWs really were secret racists all along. Which is very funny. And while all that is going down, this poster of Verbal Enema rolls up, quotes a poster named Racist Man 3D, and goes, all right, all caps, "Are you the Racist Man 3D who made all those GTA 4 videos?" So, and so while this is all going down, yeah, that was kind of Racist Man 3D. He was a YCS poster, and he was minorly viral in the 2000s for his GTA 4 videos, which are still up. But after this happened, he changed his YouTube name to RM3D. Like, he's no longer openly.
Of course.
He's no longer openly racist man. He is now secretly racist man. And you just have more of the really bad fake quotes, more of that people. I'm sorry, but nobody's going to fall for this, you racist piece of shit. This is the saddest scheme I think I've ever seen. And and if you want to read Juggalo Baby Coffin's post here, where this is right at the end.
Juggalo Baby Coffin says,
"It's the same handful of regating losers trying to cancel me after whining for 700 pages on their secret forum that canceling people is the same thing as murder and you have to kill all trans people to preserve free speech."
which is basically, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and one beautiful image to end this all out. This is a Twitter post that Atomic Thumbs made June 26, 2020, which is when all this was going down, and they go, "Hello, it's me, the white nationalist. Please don't ask about this funky little hat." And then they post a picture of themselves wearing a yarmulke.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, don't buy this funky little hat. It's just, again, Atomic Thumbs is just the MVP of this episode, because what a great ending joke.
Yeah, that's funny. It is also a little like low-key tragic that there's no you can say this up and down, but like if at any point in time in your entire life have you ever gone like, "Oh yeah, I'm a real racist and I'm a big ol' Hitler guy," people will quote tweet you and be like, "This user says that he's a big old Hitler guy." And it's like, okay, well, this is stupid. What are we fucking doing? You know? It's just like we are trapped in this like eternal downward spiral of like the discourse is getting stupider and stupider and stupider, and like nothing is taken in good faith anymore. Everything is sarcastic. Everything has a secret kind of smarmy little side idea that like nothing is serious. It's all just getting more and more regressive, and I don't see a way forward.
Yeah,
you know?
and I will admit, as someone who tends to be pretty unserious, I act that way because I do care about this stuff, and I do take it seriously. That's kind of my cope is by sort of trying to feel less serious. But yeah, I don't have an answer for this, and it's all I can do is in my own personal way try and be a more sincere and better person, and I'm not always perfect about that, but I'm glad I'm trying, and my life is a lot better doing that than it used to be.
Yeah, we're doing our goddamnedest.
Yeah, so now that just the kind of ending thing here, so I want to tell you, I don't have any screenshots, unfortunately, but I want to let you know how the people on Bad Game reacted after all this went down. So the guy from Bad Game who made the fake racist screenshots came back to Bad Game thinking that everyone was going to be singing his praises, and instead they're like, "You idiot, you made us look like morons out there, and you got our hopes up for no reason, fuck you." So just everyone turned on him as well. And unfortunately, this is around the point where they panicked and mass banned all the zero post count accounts. So thankfully, that was the end of that. That was the last time I ever saw badgame.net. And I'm glad that's not a part of my life anymore. I'm glad that I've been able to take this information and at least get something constructive out of it. And I will say in the future, I might do some videos about some of the stuff in here that they talked about in the gaming industry that was kind of interesting. So just in closing, and on a positive note, I actually have in the past year become internet friends with some former Bad Game posters because of the Twitter account and because of my YouTube videos I've done about Brigador and everything. And it was super gratifying to learn that they had of their own volition decided to leave Bad Game after the Brigador thing went down, because that was kind of their wake-up call moment. And, obviously this isn't something I would just believe at face value, but these are people I've been friends with for years now at this point. These are people who are on my Discord. These are people like me who are, and it's been really kind of gratifying to know that I had a positive change on these people. And I know that this decision that they made to sever from these communities and start over again is a decision that obviously had negative consequences on their personal life, because they basically had to restart their friend circle. And as someone who just went through that, it sucks. But they put the work in because they genuinely wanted to improve. And now they're cool fixtures in my Discord and good friends. And I'm glad to have them on our side. I'm glad that I was able to get something good out of all this nonsense.
Yeah, it's good that we got something out of it, right?
Yeah,
a couple of people jumped off.
Yeah, because like we were talking about earlier, I think ultimately that's what really matters, is that people can change and that they can escape these toxic environments. And it makes me feel really good to know that my dumb bullshit helps in a small way. And so, like I mentioned earlier, just at the end here, don't worry, this was my last big secret. Next episode, I'll be right back to reading funny things that don't involve me at all. So you don't have to worry about that. And I'm looking forward to doing some more fun light ones with guests after this to make up for doing a kind of heavy and serious one like this.
Yeah, we have some very interesting guests lined up that I'm just still kind of reeling from. I'm very surprised that we managed to catch up with all these different guests. But this was good. It's very disconcerting, but that's kind of the case when it comes to talking about capital G gamers in this rotten fucking world of ours. But I still had fun, I'm glad that we ran them back into their little hole. I wonder what it would take to actually get I guess the whole Kiwi Farms thing is because Kiwi Farms was doing they were targeting people and all that, and these guys are just being dickheads in private, right?
Yeah, I think there might have been some private harassment that might have happened in messages and stuff to other people, but it wasn't an organized. Yeah, it wasn't like Kiwi Farms where it was literally about trying to goad people into suicide.
Right.
It was literally just it was just a bunch of miserable people sharing their misery with each other.
Yeah. So I don't know how much that would actually work, but
Yeah. So I guess so. Any closing thoughts about all this other than that?
Games are fun. However, don't let games become your identity.
Yeah, it really is, because again, as someone who loves games, games are fun, but they are just a fun distraction from real life. They are, don't let them become your life, because, and I'm saying this, people who like games and someone who makes them in Winslow's case, games are great, they rule, but they're just a part of life.
Right. I mean, they're an incredible way of exploring and expressing the world, and feeling your feelings and talking about them through an interactive medium. All that's fucking great. Big fan of all of that. But yeah, you're not doing yourself a favor by surrounding by people who say things that frighten you. Because there were people on these forums that were I would say they weren't out and out fascists, right? But they were, definitely sitting among them, and they maybe have been radicalized into that kind of thing. So, if you're surrounded by people who are, telling you that, the solution to your problems is to, close yourself off and to hate more and to, revel in the suicides and the torments of other people, for things that they had no control over, if somebody lives a big evil life and then kills themselves, it's well... So it goes. That's the live by the sword, die by the sword, right? But if somebody is just like born away and then has a society that treats them like shit and then they end up killing themselves, that's not a laughing matter. And if you're surrounded by people who like are telling you to like yell statistics at people and try to get them to kill themselves, get out while you still can, because this shit will fucking poison you.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you're burning your own life down. You don't realize that soon all of these people will forget you and they will discard you because you don't realize that you're actually you are an addict of a different kind of drug. You know?
Yeah, like the getting mad at video games is not that's a very bad video game drug to get addicted to, because you're always going to be able to find more of it.
Right. And it's not even like getting mad at video games so much as it is just like being hooked on like permanent rage. You know?
Yeah, like I will say, like when a couple months ago, I was talking to one of Lotax's friends from the last year of their life, and there's someone who like politically I wouldn't really interact with on my own, but I was doing it as in service of this podcast and the account and everything. And what I was looking at their Twitter account, and it's very funny because a lot of the stuff that they were retweeting was stuff about comic books that was kind of like weird. Like I saw like one headline I remember it was a headline. It was like, "Wow, this new DC comic is all about the Joker getting pregnant. This is so dumb." And I was like, "That's just a weird choice for the Joker." And then I looked into it and I found out it was a gag comic that they were doing for fun. And I was like, oh, I get it. This person is just lying to make people feel angry about something. And then I was like, yeah, this is why I don't like you look when you're in this world. It doesn't take much pushing to see how facile it all is and how transparent it is. And it's like, it's like don't exist in that world. It's all just, these are people just lying to you to make you upset so you'll pay attention to them and give them money. It's just find real shit.
Yeah. Like, truly, I know that everybody on Earth says it, but it's absolutely God's truth. If you see something that makes you feel, like, total rage and makes you want to go, like, oh, fuck all of X group of people, look into it. Get the actual truth, because there's people on all sides that are going to try to get you to hate a certain group of people for one reason or another. You know? Like, you really have to do your due diligence to actually, like, figure shit out before you just consign an entire group of people to oblivion. I mean, we could go on to this for quite a bit more, but the number of times I've seen a story where it's like a very clear cut and dry case of like, some am I the asshole thread on Reddit, which is like all of that. If you see it on Reddit, it's a complete and total lie. If you see it on an Am I the Asshole or a relationship advice part of Reddit, it's like, if you believe any of that, your reading level is at like Laffy Taffy jokes. Like they are so completely fucking lies. And you'll see like posters like, my boyfriend makes me sleep in a trash can and lights me on fire and breaks all of my bones every single day, but he says that I'm a bitch. Am I wrong? And people will be like, I can't believe this guy. We need to find him and kill him. And it's like, yeah, it's you're being farmed. You're being farmed for clicks in the exact same way that people who post things that are just like, I have 100 abortions a day and I think I only want Chads because I'm a Stacy with a perfect body and I hate incels and I hate games. And you see all these people just like pulling their fucking hair out trying to get this woman killed, when it's like, that was written by a dude to get you to click the link to get money from the internet.
Yeah, or like a real bleak one that's kind of blown up recently is like the Rate Me subreddit or whatever, where none of those are actual people posting their pictures. It's all a thing about posting pictures of attractive people and saying they're ugly to tear them down to convince people that everyone is super negative about other people's appearances. It really, and they know people click it because it is really depressing, like, just to think about how there are these entire ecosystems that just exist like that entirely. Just they're fabricated to make rage bait, like you said. And there's already so much real enraging stuff in the world. I don't want to waste my time with that. Anyways, so I guess speaking of enraging stuff,
fun episode, guys. We're having fun.
Yeah, I guess. Well, since we're going to go into our sort of closing bits and our stuff here, I do want to say a neat thing now is I have a PO box now. So if you want to send me anything, letters or packages or whatever, you can send it to me at jaybrandstetter, PO Box 2750, Ventnor City, New Jersey 08406-2750. So if you want to, if you have like any old something awful memorabilia you want to get rid of, or you just want to write a letter or something, send it there. It's a PO box, so it's cool.
Yeah, don't send me anything. Buy my stuff on the internet, and I will send it to you. That's my deal. Yeah, as always, you can find us at IFTIPod on Twitter and IFTIPod@gmail.com if you have any ideas for stories. We are lining up with a few other very interesting people as we get ready for more and more bigger episodes. My game is still playable entirely online on Tabletop Simulator. I am posting about it as often as I can. It's extremely discouraging to do so, but I am doing it. I'm drawing on it every day. If you want to see more of it, I stream on Twitch. You can find my link in the bio, I'm sure. I'm on Twitter at Calculations. Or no, I'm on Instagram at Calculations. I'm on Twitter at Winslow Domain. And you can see all of the things that I make, and you can buy all of my silly shit at winslowdomain.com. And Jay, you have yours, and I can't remember what they are off the top of my head.
If you go to linktr.com/jaybrandstetter, I have all my links on there. I'm on most places as jaybrandstetter, on Twitter, Discord, everything. I opened up a Instagram recently under Panda Brandstetter. I don't post on there nearly as much, so if I post too much on my regular accounts, that's a nice place to follow me for just the highlights. So I will say Winslow's Instagram is very good. He's been doing like time lapses and streams of his artwork for the card game, and also like neat time lapses of him like setting up his booths at the convention. And it's really neat seeing like all the organization and work that goes into setting one of those up. Yeah,
I'm getting ready for. I'm actually hiring a social media manager, which is going to be an interesting stepping off point for my career, because everything I've done up until now has been entirely genuine, and like I have 10,000 followers on Instagram, and I each one of those people knows me because I made something that they saw and liked, and now I'm just going to be like really pushing ads and really pushing more and more eyes on the prize so I can get this game to be as big as it is. But that also means that for the past few days, I have been like drawing for hours and hours and hours, and recording it and getting those drawings completely finished and touched up, and also getting the high-speed videos for people to watch. So I'll be posting a lot of those soon, and more comedy stuff. I've got a show at Laugh Factory now, which is crazy.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's great.
A show at a comedy club is very difficult to find. So,
no, I'm glad for you. I'm glad that you're getting to do comedy. Do comedy again, because I know you've been busy with your card and everything. You're good at it. I'm glad that you're getting to work on it.
Thanks, man. Well, that should do it for us today. Follow us everywhere. Listen to the rest of the episodes. Sorry this episode ran really long, but you know what? We had a lot to say. You haven't heard from us in a while. Here we are. And, we'll do a Patreon episode after this. Yeah, get us on Patreon. Fuck it, finally. Last thing we'll say. Follow us on Patreon. Throw us a couple bucks. All of the money goes to Jay and to Steve. None of it goes to me. If you want to support me, you just buy my stuff and I'll send you real stuff. So,
all right.
Not like that fake shit on Patreon.
All right, it's good to be back.
All right, take care.
Bye.
I'm From the Internet is created by Jay Brandstetter and Winslow Domain. Edited by Steve Brown. Music by Steve Is Broke.